a lot. There's a lot of Azure subscription types, and depending on the type, there's also some slight variations within each type that may or may not impact on the way you can utilize your subscription. So I wanted to make this video just to go through most of the Azure subscription types and some of their benefits, drawbacks, use cases, and also how you can obtain one. And I'll also try to sprinkle in a little bit of my personal preference now after having worked with Azure for a couple of years. So yeah, let's go. By the way, if you want to get in touch with me, either with questions about this or if you want to discuss some other Azure stuff, you can catch me live over at my Twitch channel, or you can hit me up on Twitter. Links to the both down below. And do keep in mind that even though I try to be as accurate as I can, things change quite rapidly with Azure, so yeah, keep it in mind. I'll be starting with the most common ones, and then we will get to the more rare ones or niche subscription types in the end. And I'll leave a link down in the description to a complete list of all the Azure subscription types from Microsoft. On a general note, you can kind of divide these subscriptions into two different categories. You have the ones that come with some credits to spend, either as a one-off or recurring, and you have the ones where you pay for any and all consumption that is within those subscriptions. These subscriptions that come with credits to spend, they often have some limitations on what you can purchase and not. An example is that when the Norwegian regions opened, they were not open to all these benefit subscriptions, the ones that come with some credits to spend. And you usually can't really purchase things like reserved instances on these kind of subscriptions. Whereas the ones that where you pay for any and all consumption, they are usually more open and able to be used for pretty much anything. Alright, so the first one on our list is the one that most people and organizations start out with, I guess, and that's the pay-as-you-go subscription type. And the reason people usually start out with it is because you just sign up with a credit card and you're good to go. And as the name implies, you pay for the resources you use as you go along. And that makes it a great fit for when you're just starting out or when you're just building smaller environments. But since you're paying by credit card, it really doesn't scale all that well. Basically, it just scales up to your credit card limit, I guess. But you can pay for pay-as-you-go by invoice, but that is something you have to be approved for, so you have to apply to Microsoft in order to pay by invoice, and the documentation around this process is somewhat fuzzy. And my personal experience with paying by invoice on pay-as-you-go subscriptions are not the best, to say the least, but I might have just been unlucky. Either way, paying by invoice is a lot better than paying by credit card. The use cases for pay-as-you-go subscriptions are basically anything you want. It's just about the most versatile subscription type there is. And with it, you have complete access to any service in the Azure portal, and you also have complete control over costs and prices right in the Azure portal. But as I mentioned before, it doesn't really scale all that well, and it's not just about paying by credit card, it's also about governance, because at some point you will want to have more than just a single Azure subscription, and that becomes quite a hassle with pay-as-you-go subscriptions. So at that point you might want a subscription type that is better at scale, like for instance a CSP subscription. Pay-as-you-go also have some subtypes, I guess you want to call it, and an example of that is the dev test subscription type that, as the name implies, is designed for development and testing, and because of that its prices are a bit lower than the regular pay-as-you-go subscription types. And the reason for that is with a dev test subscription you pay for just the compute part and not the license part as you usually would. Sad thing is you need a Visual Studio subscription to have a pay-as-you-go dev test subscription. CSP, or Cloud Solution Provider, is a program where Microsoft partners can resell Microsoft 365 licenses and other stuff, but also Azure consumption. And in order to get one of these, you have to get it from a partner. You cannot get one yourself, but that also means that you have to have a partner relationship established with a Microsoft partner in your tenant before you can get a subscription. But once that is all in place, your Azure consumption is not actually billed directly to you. Microsoft bills it to your partner, and then I hope that partner bills you. A benefit of this kind of an arrangement is that you can have your Azure consumption billed on the same invoice as your Microsoft 365 licenses if you use your same partner for both. And depending on your partner, you might not be required to have a credit card to sign up. You can just go to your partner and say, hey, I want an Azure subscription, and they'll say, here, go nuts. A little drawback is that you lose a bit of transparency and clarity around costs and prices within the Azure portal, because with a CSP subscription you do not see any prices or costs directly in the portal unless your partner puts you on a Azure plan, and then you can ask that partner to please show me prices and costs in the Azure portal, and even then you will not see your prices, you will just see the suggested retail price. Apart from that, CSP is a great fit for both small and larger environments, and it's also great to just go to your partner and say, I want 5 more Azure subscriptions, and they'll go like, okay, and do their magic in the background, and suddenly you have 5 more subscriptions appear in your portal. And that makes it great for governance. Say for example, if your devs want to have access to some Azure services, but you kind of want to silo them in, you just order another subscription and give them access to that, and they'll have access to that subscription and not anything else in your Azure portal. Next up is the enterprise agreement type, and enterprise agreements have, and to some extent still are, a great way for large companies to buy licenses in bulk and then get some really nice volume discounts on it. But you can also get your Azure subscriptions through your enterprise agreement. And the great benefit here is real governance, because you can use your EA portal to create all the Azure subscriptions you want and then assign them to departments or individuals as you see fit. The downside to this kinds of subscription types is that you have to have an enterprise agreement, and the requirements there are pretty high. While we're on the corporate side of things, I can quickly mention the Azure in Open licensing. And I say quickly because I really can't recommend this, so I won't cover it in depth. But the way it works is that you go to your reseller and you say you want a set amount of Azure credits, and they provide you with an online service activation key. You then go and redeem that key, and you have your credits to spend within the next 12 months. Any credits that are left after the 12 months are lost, and the same goes if you convert your open licensing into an enterprise agreement, then also all your existing credits are lost. If you have an active Visual Studio subscription, you are also entitled to some Azure credits each month. Now, the sum is $150 if you have a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, and $50 if you have a Visual Studio Professional or Visual Studio Test Professional. And these kinds of subscriptions are awesome for personal learning, personal testing, development, and so forth, but they cannot be used for production workloads. Except technically you can, but if you exceed your monthly limit, then the subscription is disabled and every resource in that subscription becomes unavailable. Another thing that you cannot do with a Visual Studio subscription is purchasing things like reserved instances, thus emphasizing the not for production workload. But again, it's great for testing, development, and just simply learning Azure. The next type is the free type of Azure subscription, and that sounds great, right? It's free, what's not to like? Well, it has some drawbacks, we'll get to that. But first, the free type of Azure subscriptions comes with a starting credit of $200, which you can spend on anything you want in the first month. It also comes with a certain amount of free services for the first 12 months. But after that, you can use it for any Azure service that are always free for as long as you like. And everything you need to sign up for a free Azure subscription type is a credit card, phone number, and a Microsoft account, like for instance your Outlook.com email address. That makes the free subscription type a great way to start off your Azure journey and just familiarize yourself with the Azure portal and all the services that are there. And who knows, if your Azure plans are really small, maybe all the Azure services that are always free is enough for you, and that way you'll never have to pay for any Azure services at all. Now back to the drawbacks, because of course there are some. When your initial $200 are spent or the first 30 days have passed, your subscription will be disabled, and you will have to upgrade it to a pay-as-you-go subscription in order to continue. That is also true if all you want to do is to use your 12 months of free services, or if you just want to use the Azure services that are always free. That means that I really can't recommend this subscription type for anything else than educational purposes. It's really there just for you to check Azure out. Next up is the sponsorship type of Azure subscriptions, and sponsorships, they carry a set amount of Azure credits for a set amount of time. In that way they kind of look like the free subscription type, but the only way to get your Azure sponsorship is by email invitation. Now you do need a credit card to sign up for your sponsorship and subscription, but as long as you stay within the limits of the sponsorship, you are not billed on your credit card. If you exceed either the monetary limit on your sponsorship or your time limit on your sponsorship, you will be billed on your credit card at pay-as-you-go prices. An example of such a sponsorship is through Microsoft non-profit program, where if you are approved as a non-profit organization within Microsoft, you can be granted up to $3,500 each year in Azure credits. Now, this is a great offer for non-profits because you can do a whole lot in Azure with that amount of money. And for smaller non-profit organizations, that will probably be all the Azure credits they need. The downside is that those credits are limited to that one subscription only. That means if you need some governance, for example, you need more Azure subscriptions, you are stuck with either going with a pay-as-you-go or CSP or other types of Azure subscriptions. The last type of subscription I want to cover is the Azure Pass, and this is a rather limited type of Azure subscription, and the usual way of getting it is attending an Azure class of some sort, and the way it works is that you receive a promo code that you can redeem in order to have a shiny new Azure subscription. Now you are limited to one promo code per Microsoft account, so you can't really run around and collecting promo codes in order to fuel your Azure consumption. And you still need a credit card in order to sign up for an Azure Pass subscription, and by the end of the validity of the Azure Pass, your subscription is converted into a pay-as-you-go subscription. So what kind of Azure subscription do I recommend? I recommend the CSP. For me, it's a no-brainer. You can scale easily from a single subscription to start out with to whatever you need to cover your governance needs. You don't need a credit card because you pay by invoice that you get from your Microsoft partner, and your first point of contact for anything Azure related is your Microsoft partner, which hopefully provides the best possible customer experience. And if they don't, then you can just take your CSP subscription to another partner. I hope this video provided some insights. I hope you liked it. If you did, please do the needful, liking, commenting, subscribing, all that. And if you want to get in touch with me, my socials are down in the description. And yeah, see you later.